New plans on the waste charging scheme as concern lingers. Cathay Pacific admits making mistakes following mass flight cancellation earlier. And the U.S. Justice Department is taking Apple to court. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The government's demonstration scheme for the Municipal Solid Waste Charging Scheme will take place on April 1st. The 14 selected premises for the demonstration scheme encompass government offices, residential buildings, shopping malls, and restaurants. Tenants there will be given designated rubbish bags and labels free of charge. Earlier this year, the government announced it would postpone implementation of the Municipal Solid Waste Charging Scheme to August 1st. The original kickoff date, April 1st, will mark the launch of the demonstration scheme, with more details unveiled in documents submitted to LegCo by Secretary for Environment and Ecology Zhe Qinwen. It will take place across 14 locations, including the West Kowloon government offices involving about 2,500 employees. Public and private residential buildings include Onning House in Tsuen Wan, Lin Chu Estate in Chai Wan, and Genius Court in Kowloon City. They have a total of around 900 tenants. Also covered are 2 3-nil residential buildings in Sham Shui Po that have no owners corporations, no residents organizations, and no engaged property management companies. Notices have been displayed at Genius Court. Shopping malls Uptown Plaza in Tai Po and Chelsea Heights in Tuen Mun are also on the list, as well as 2 residential care homes in Tuen Mun and 4 restaurants including Cafe de Coro in Admiralty. During the demonstration period, the government will provide designated bags and labels free of charge to all selected premises. Led by Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration Chuck Wing Hing and his interdepartmental steering group, the scheme will collect operational data and opinions from stakeholders. Then they will submit their findings to the Legislative Council between May and June to help improve arrangements for the full implementation of the scheme in August. Lawmaker Lau Kwok Fan, who chairs the panel on environmental affairs, noted that even schools and villages are not covered in the scheme. The government should extend the demonstration scheme citywide for citizens to become familiarized with the practice as early as possible. Concerns of confusion too among residents at some selected premises such as Lin Chu Estate here. With fewer than 10 days before the demonstration scheme takes place, this resident said they were not informed on the details of the program and are worried about possible chaos, especially among senior citizens. Some other residents, meanwhile, are unfazed about the new waste disposal arrangement because they are used to existing recycling measures. Some residents at this 3-nil building, which has no cleaning staff, expressed worries that the scheme will worsen the premises hygiene. As the 3-nil building has no property management companies, the government sent officers door-to-door on Thursday to explain details of the demonstration scheme. The management of Cathay Pacific Airways admitted at the Legislative Council today that they underestimated the levels of pilot reserves needed around Christmas and the Lunar New Year period. The misjudgment led to travel disruptions with nearly 800 flights cancelled amid the holiday season. Some lawmakers also flagged problems in the airline's monitoring of pilots' flying hours. Between late last year and February, a total of 786 passenger flights were cancelled by Cathay Pacific, reason being the lack of standby pilots. In the report submitted to the Civil Aviation Department earlier, the city's flagship carrier admitted lapses in their internal planning. Cathay's management, including CEO Ronald Lam, attended the Legislative Council's Economic Development panel today to explain. He apologized for the situation and faced scrutiny from lawmakers. Issues include the airline's lack of mechanisms to monitor how many pilots are reaching the maximum flying limit of 900 hours a year, which led to some pilots being unable to cover for absent colleagues during the peak season.
I understand that there is the flying hour limit, and I believe Cathay has a very good management system. You must have known through your system.
The contributing factor of the 900-hour flying limit was prevalent because our Airbus wide-body pilots had flown so much during the summer peak while we were retraining our Boeing 777 pilots. But the system doesn't contain the necessary software to draw attention to pilots that are approaching that 900-hour limit, and we've now rectified that.
every year, pilot cannot fly for more than 900 hours. The international standard is 1,000 hours, though. So many pilots are just sitting at home without being able to fly. This is one of the problems. It is the broad consensus that flight hours have to do with air safety. In Hong Kong, there is a flying hour limit. Under our law, this limit has been effective and it applies to all local airlines.
On how to address the shortfall of 1,200 pilots over the long term, Cathay said it will prioritize the training of local pilots before recruiting from overseas. So far, the manpower is split evenly between local and foreign pilots. Some pilots are also rehires from the now-defunct Cathay Dragon. Some former first officers from the subsidiary are now serving as captains, Cathay revealed. The Housing Authority's Subsidized Housing Committee approved the raise on income and asset limits for people applying for public housing by an average of 2.1%. The income limits will be raised for families of 2 or 3 and those with 5 or more tenants by between 0.9 and 4.4%. For instance, the income limit for 2-person families will be increased by $180 to $19,730. For 3-person families, it will be raised by $330. The limits for singletons and 4-person households, meanwhile, will remain unchanged. The asset limit will increase by 3% across the board, in line with the established mechanism. Just one day after Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited Australia, the Australian government today updated the country's travel advisory for its residents visiting Hong Kong. This came after Hong Kong passed the legislation of Article 23 of the Basic Law on Tuesday. Australian authorities said Article 23 has broad definitions, which means travelers could unintentionally violate the law. The Australian authorities said individuals could be detained without charge and not allowed to have a lawyer. China's foreign ministry earlier criticized Western countries for interfering in the internal affairs of China and the SAR. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Israel today on his 6th Middle East mission since the start of the war on Gaza on October 7th. His visit comes amid rising tension between Israel and its closest ally, the U.S., on how Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is handling the war. Nasfi Karim with more.
Antony Blinken arrives in Israel for difficult talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. While Netanyahu wants his troops to attack Gaza's southernmost town of Rafah, the U.S. is firmly opposed to it, with 1.5 million Palestinians having nowhere to go. Before leaving Egypt, where he met senior Arab officials, Blinken spoke to the media.
A major military operation in Rafah would be a mistake, something we don't support, and it's also not necessary to deal with Hamas, which is necessary. We're going to have an opportunity next week to share in detail that view with our Israeli counterparts and to lay out our views on how to deal with the problem differently.
Netanyahu insists that the only way to defeat Hamas completely would be to destroy the group's battalions in Rafah, and he made clear he doesn't need any U.S. green light. Meanwhile, the U.S. and other countries continue to airdrop aid into Gaza, where agencies say famine has already taken hold in many parts of the Strip.
Ambassador,
the U.S. is hoping its latest United Nations Security Council draft resolution can be adopted. The resolution determines an imperative for an immediate and sustainable ceasefire to protect civilians and enable urgent humanitarian aid to be delivered. Linda Thomas-Greenfield, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, is optimistic that tougher wording will be adopted by the 15-member council, which needs just one veto from one of the 5 permanent members to fall through. However, Russia's deputy envoy Dmitry Polyansky has doubts about the word imperative, saying Moscow would not be satisfied if anything doesn't call for an immediate ceasefire. In northern Gaza, 8 aid trucks crossed into the Strip directly from southern Israel, part of a pilot program. However, agencies say hundreds of aid trucks are needed on a daily basis to deal with the catastrophic hunger afflicting the 2.3 million population in Gaza. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
The U.S. Justice Department has announced a sweeping antitrust lawsuit against Apple. It accused the tech giant of engineering an illegal monopoly in smartphones that blocks out competitions and competitors and stifles innovation. The lawsuit filed in the federal court in New Jersey alleges that Apple has monopoly power in the smartphone market and uses its control over the iPhone to engage in broad, sustained, and illegal course of conduct. Filed with 16 state attorneys general, the lawsuit is the latest example of the Justice Department's approach to aggressive enforcement of federal antitrust law. Apple called the lawsuit wrong on the facts and the law and said it will vigorously defend against it. Apple Inc., based in Cupertino, California, has more recently been built around the iPhone and other popular products, such as the iPad, Mac, and Apple Watch.
But as our complaint alleges, Apple has maintained monopoly power in the smartphone market not simply by staying ahead of the competition on the merits, but by violating federal antitrust law. Consumers should not have to pay higher prices because companies break the law. We allege that Apple has employed a strategy that relies on exclusionary, anti-competitive conduct that hurts both consumers and developers.
As U.S. prosecutors took aim at Apple across the Pacific Ocean, CEO Tim Cook unveiled the company's new store in Shanghai. Cook opened the doors of Apple's 8th and largest store in the Chinese financial hub and made a victory sign after staff counted down and cheered. Customers, some of whom queued hours before or even waited overnight, flocked into the store once it opened at 7 p.m. local time on Thursday. Still ahead, 4 technology-related exhibitions are on the way. United Nations take measures to deal with AI. Welcome back. 4 technology exhibitions will be held at the Convention and Exhibition Center in Wan Chai next month. Event organizer, the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, said they anticipate at least 80,000 visitors will attend the fairs. Mimo Sangai reports.
In recent years, innovative technology has been a key focus of the government. The Hong Kong Trade Development Council announced today that 4 technology-related exhibitions were held at the Convention and Exhibition Centre in April: the HKTDC Hong Kong International Lighting Fair, HKTDC Smart Lighting Expo, InnoX, and HKTDC Hong Kong Electronics Fair. The organisers said about 4,300 exhibitors from more than 20 countries and regions will participate in this year's event. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the HKTDC outlined the organisers' expectations for the fairs.
Last year in April, because we have all the fairs grouped together, and we have around 66,000 visitors coming to our all the 4 tech fairs. So we are anticipating. We hope that we hope that we could reach back to the pandemic situation. We hope we will at least to have at least 80,000 visitors, not less than 80,000 visitors from around the world joining our April fairs.
With the theme being Innovations for a Smarter World, InnoX will showcase various types of innovative technology. The smart recycling food waste bin will be one of the products on display at InnoX. The government's waste charging scheme will be implemented on August 1st. The exhibitor said technologies such as the smart bin will help the public adapt to the change and improve their recycling habits.
To these food waste smart bins, we can effectively reduce the amount of food waste delivered to the treatment system. We can encourage the citizens to make use of these smart systems, make use of the AI or IoT to adapt to the smart cities habits in Hong Kong.
News 9, TVB News.
The United Nations General Assembly has approved its first resolution on artificial intelligence aimed at giving global support to international efforts to ensure that AI benefits all nations and is safe. Tracy Furness has more.
May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt the draft resolution A/78/L49? It is so decided.
The resolution, sponsored by the United States and co-sponsored by 123 countries, including China, was adopted by consensus with a bang of the gavel and without a vote. This means it has the support of all 193 UN member nations.
This technology has the potential to unlock more progress on more issues for more people. But in order to ensure equitable access to these benefits and mitigate risks for communities across the globe, we must approach this technology as a global community, leaving no one behind.
She added the resolution is the first of its kind adopted not only by majority but by consensus, because the risk and benefits of AI have the potential to impact all.
This resolution is a stepping stone for existing and future multilateral initiatives on digital cooperation and on AI.
Morocco's permanent representative to the UN, Omar Halali, added the resolution is not a net in itself, but the beginning of our collective journey to shape safe, secure and trustworthy artificial intelligence systems for sustainable development that leaves no one behind. US Vice President Kamala Harris said AI must be in the public interest. It must be adopted and advanced in ways that protect everyone from potential harm and ensures everyone is able to ensure the benefits. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has praised a decision by EU leaders to endorse plans to use the profits from frozen Russian assets to buy arms and ammunition for Ukraine.
We must continue to support Ukraine's efforts to fight back on the battlefield. So I'm glad that leaders endorsed our proposal to use the extraordinary revenues from immobilized Russian assets. This will provide funding for military equipment to Ukraine. We can expect to collect around €3 billion for 2024 and similar amounts in the future years.
The 27-nation EU is holding around €210 billion in Russian central bank assets, most of it frozen in Belgium in retaliation for Moscow's war against Ukraine. A small group of member countries, notably Hungary, refused to supply weapons to Ukraine, so these windfall profits would be split up. In India, supporters of an anti-corruption crusader who is also a popular politician held protests today against his arrest. New Delhi's top elected official, Arvind Kejriwal, was arrested Thursday night by the Federal Enforcement Directorate controlled by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government. Opposition parties say his arrest is part of a crackdown by Modi's government before national elections. Kejriwal's parties and ministers are accused of accepting 1 billion rupees in bribes from liquor contractors nearly 2 years ago. In the lead-up to the general election, which starts April 19th, India's opposition parties accuse the government of misusing its power to harass and weaken its political opponents to gain unfair advantage in the polls. In the U.S., medical history was made this week with doctors in Boston successfully transplanting a pig's kidney into a living person. NBC has more.
Inside this Mass General operating room, a medical milestone. For the first time, a team of doctors transplanted a genetically modified pig kidney into a 62-year-old man whose previously donated kidney failed and was struggling on dialysis.
It's historical.
Dr. Leo Riella first suggested a pig kidney, knowing the patient could not wait for a human one. Of the 100,000 people in the U.S. on transplant waiting lists, the vast majority need kidneys.
Most of our patients have to wait for an organ from the deceased donor list. And unfortunately, if they have to stay years on dialysis, that means their health is going to continue to deteriorate.
Our immune systems typically reject foreign tissue. But through cutting-edge CRISPR technology from eGenesis, this pig kidney had 69 genomic edits to improve compatibility and to reduce the risk of infection from viruses. Still, animal-to-human transplants are riddled with unknowns, including how long the pig kidney will last. But so far, the patient's nephrologist says the results appear promising.
He has the surgery on Saturday, and we think he's on track for discharge this coming Saturday.
So within a week?
Within a week.
In a statement, the patient said, "I saw it not only as a way to help me, but a way to provide hope for the thousands of people who need a transplant to survive."
We need a permanent solution. And dialysis was never made to be a permanent solution.
Could it essentially make dialysis obsolete?
That's our goal.
For the first time ever, Canada will reduce its temporary residence and set a cap on temporary immigration, the country's immigration minister Mark Miller said Thursday. It is Canada's latest government effort to address a housing shortage and stretched essential services. In recent years, there has been a sharp rise in international students, foreign workers, and other temporary residents coming to Canada on time-limited visas. The government has come under pressure for its immigration policies, with critics arguing they have worsened a housing crunch. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.